The sports reporters.
I'm Mitch Albom of the Detroit Free Press and author of The 5 People You Meet in Heaven. At the end of Friday's game, LeBron James whispered to Gilbert Arenas, if you miss these free throws, you're going to lose. Guess what? He was right.
I'm Mike Lupica of the New York Daily News and the author of Heat. Okay, I don't want to make a big deal out of this or sound like a sore loser, because that's not me. But where did my satellite dish hide the Stanley Cup playoffs?
I'm Howard Bryan of the Washington Post. After weeks of wondering how the guy with the best supporting cast could be the MVP, Steve Nash convinced me that he, not LeBron or Kobe, is the most valuable player in the NBA.
Sunny days are here again in Phoenix, where the Suns have blazed past the Lakers, winning 3 straight to wipe out Kobe and Phil. But not all of L.A. Bring on the Clippers. Undefeated Barbaro stumbled out of the gate and then ran a picture-perfect race, pulling away for his 6th victory. Can he pull off the hat trick and post racing's first Triple Crown since '78?
The Sports Reporters, presented by American Express, from the ESPN zone in Times Square in New York City.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of the Sports Reporters. Gentlemen, Kobe Bryant had 23 points at halftime last night, and his Lakers were already down 15 points. Kobe scored only 1 point in the second half, and the Lakers were blown out by Phoenix 121-90. So, Mitch, did Phoenix shut down Kobe, or did Kobe just pack it in?
Kobe packed it in, and he was only doing what the rest of his teammates had done in the first half. It was a very odd second half for Kobe, and I think he was trying to send some kind of message like, well, this is what the team looks like if I don't try. It was a pretty sad-looking team.
I don't want to hear that he's the MVP. I don't want to hear that he's the new Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan would not play a game under those circumstances, and I love this idea that the Suns shut him down. The Phoenix Suns?
One of the worst defensive teams in the league.
Yeah, my question for all of this is Kobe that sinister? You're in Game 7. You need to take this game over. Are you really trying to send a message now and blow a 3-1 lead? I'm watching this game, and I could not believe it. I was stunned. He didn't move without the ball. He didn't want to do anything with it.
But once the game got away from him, I mean, you could see the air go out of anything. Right. But you can't just stand on the outside and act like they're not passing the ball. This guy scored 81 points a game. He went for 50 the other night. Kobe Bryant gets shots when he wants to get shots. It was like they had become these schizophrenic Lakers. They got off to a lead in this series by all of a sudden playing team ball, but in his heart, he knew that he carried them there, and it was like he was standing out there in the second half and saying, okay, guys, you think this supporting cast is so good?
He didn't have any trouble dribbling through 3 guys to try to win a game. Right. You can put in the same effort just to stay close in a game. First of all, it wasn't necessarily over at halftime, not against the Phoenix Suns. Right. Okay, maybe against the Detroit Pistons, but you could be down 30 at halftime against the Phoenix Suns. If you can put something together, you can be in the game.
And he stood there outside the 3-point line for the whole half.
Yep.
He didn't post up. I mean, all of those moves, he can make any shot he wants to make. And if you watch the last game, he can do things that guys that even Jordan, I don't think I've seen do. But he didn't want to play.
Yeah, but here's what Jordan would have done. He would have played you to the parking lot. He would have played you to the parking lot last night. Listen, all of this Kobe MVP stuff started at the end of the season because people thought they were going to clip the Suns in the first round. And then they got ahead 3-1, and now it's taken on this tremendous momentum. Let's talk about the guy on the other team who is going to win the MVP award. Nash was so tremendous in this series. And Nash has a way of, I know they shot 60%, and when a team does that, they're all going to look good. Boris, Diaw, and Barbosa, and all these guys, he's playing without Amari Stoudemire, and in those last 3 games, he showed you why they won all those games in the regular season.
Well, and on a larger picture, you saw, first of all, why the NBA is not hockey, because the top seed usually does win, even when you fall behind 3-1. And what a young team never understands is how hard it is to close out a series. When you have your foot on the other team's throat with a 3-1 lead, you must close it out. And a more mature team might have knocked the Suns out before they realized what hit them. But once you let them go from 3-1 to 3-2, and then 3-2 to 3-3, you can almost assure yourself when you're going back home you're going to lose.
And then instead of covering up Tim Thomas in their last great chance to win the series, they let him take a dribble and make that 3 the other night, and they were gone.
I mean, Kwame Brown flying right past him. If he stays home, the series is over.
Or if he could make a shot last night, Kwame Brown, maybe they win. All right, LeBron James. I think he has emerged right now as the guy who is at least the most talented player in the NBA.
And I know he's playing the Washington Wizards, okay? So he's not playing a team as good as Kobe was up against. However, you know, I thought he was the MVP this year, and I'll be quite happy for Steve Nash. He played. The kid, in the first circumstances where he had to deliver at this time of year, he did this week. I realize he wasn't playing against perhaps the most rugged defense that we'll ever see for them. No, Mitch, when he went down the baseline the other night, I thought he was playing against the Knicks, okay? Because not only do they let him catch the ball, then they just waltz down the...
That is one of the worst defensive teams I have ever seen. They should have been booted out of the playoffs just because of that. I'm sorry, you can't get into the playoffs unless you actually play some sort of defense. And he's going to have a very rude awakening. Not that he's not aware of it, because he sees the Pistons 4 times a year anyhow. He knows what he's up against. But he ain't playing the Washington Wizards anymore. And he's not going to be able to come flying down the lane anywhere he wants. He'll get his points, but I would be surprised if this series went more than 5 games. I think that they're not ready yet as a team to do this. It's very interesting that in Detroit, now LeBron James is going to start that education that Michael Jordan had a number of years ago when he came in with a weaker cast, scored 50 or 60 points a game, and went home every year to a team-oriented team. One day, LeBron James will have his moment where he jumps over, be it the Pistons, whoever's in front of him. It's not this year yet.
It's going to be interesting to see how the Pistons defend him, because I think this is a totally different NBA than what Michael Jordan had to go through when he was getting pounded in every game. Here, you make a hard foul, you're going to get suspended the next game. You're not going to be able to pound LeBron. And the other difference, too, that I see with LeBron, this is a big guy. I mean, this is not, Michael Jordan was 6'6", 210. This is 6'8", 240. No, it's going to be really interesting to see how they go after him.
But if you consider the expectations on this young man and the way he has delivered in the time he has been in this league, he is everything they could have hoped for. But it is, the symmetry of this is really extraordinary. That you know, Detroit has become like the home office for rite of passage, okay? This is going to be rough, kid, but you'll come out of this. We're going to beat you this year. And then, you know, then you regroup and come back with a better team next year.
But the Pistons were already a little ticked off that their first-round games were on, like, the NBA Network. And, you know, they were joking around saying, what do you have to do around here to actually get on a one where they can find you? And
Outdoor Life. I think they were playing on double features.
And that's
with
where the Red Wings were.
Yeah.
And now that LeBron James is going to get all the attention in the series, and it's just the way it is, and network is going to focus on him, that'll, as if the Pistons needed any more of a motivation, that'll be enough for them to try to shut him down. Tayshaun Prince, I guess, will start on him, but when you play against the Pistons, it's not one guy that does the defending, it's the entire team.
I'm telling you, and Howard, this to me is the modern version of the old Knicks, of DeBusschere, Reed, Brad, where you just looked around and saw guys who had been stars, could be bigger stars someplace else, buying into the whole idea that we can do something collectively that makes us great and memorable.
And I think they're even better this year offensively, obviously, and I think they're better off the bench. Let's move to, I know it's only one race has happened of the Triple Crown, but we already talking about a possible Triple Crown winner in Barbaro.
Oh no, it was exciting. I mean, it's always exciting in the Derby to watch the horse pull away, and you start immediately thinking, okay, finally this will be the horse that wins the Triple Crown for the first time. What was interesting about this horse is, you know, I love it when all conventional wisdom goes out the window at the Kentucky Derby. Won the Florida Derby, took all this time off, hardly ever happens, and then just blows everybody away. And for these 3 weeks, people got a horse now, except if he doesn't win the Preakness, then we don't have a horse
Like
now.
every other year where we have the same discussion and then it doesn't end up winning the Belmont or whatever.
Well, 3 of the last 4 years, the Kentucky Derby winner went on to win the Preakness and then lose the Belmont. Still ahead, can Kobe Bryant's old teammate, 34-year-old Shaquille O'Neal, and another LA icon, Pat Riley, get back to the big dance, the NBA Finals? But first, the other night in Milwaukee's Miller Park, not far from Bud Selig's office, fans greeted Barry Bonds with chants of Bonds on roids and steroids, the new national pastime.
So the best way to say it is that if you're not going to look at Bonds, you have to look at McGuire, and this whole thing is blown up.
Let's go to this thing for a second about being racial. I'm white. I can't necessarily speak to it from an African American point of view. But I don't seem to recall when Cal Ripken was chasing Lou Gehrig that whenever he passed whoever was behind Lou Gehrig, there wasn't as big a fuss about it. It's number 2. Going from number 3 to number 2 is not the same as going ahead of number 1. And in fact, the only reason it gets any attention at all is because Babe Ruth's name resonates the way that it does in the game of baseball. Barry Bonds is not owed a celebration to pass number 2. Neither is any other player in the game. And the reason that it's getting so much attention is because of the controversy around Barry Bonds. That's it. It's not a racial, it's not a, if he breaks Henry Aaron's record, and everyone goes, oh, 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 then I could say, okay, somebody's got a conspiracy against Bonds. Not when you pass the number 2 guy on any list.
And by the way, one of the reasons why it's being treated this way is because of this network. I mean, it's everything is treated as breaking news. Every at-bat is covered. So we've kind of fed this whole beast as well. Howard, I've heard this idea that this is racial. It's the biggest bunch of hooey I have ever heard. The all-time home run record is held by a distinguished, elegant citizen of the game, the great Henry Aaron, the first name in the baseball encyclopedia. So the fact that he's passing the white guy to get to number 2, how come it wasn't a big deal when Ken Griffey Jr. passed Mickey Mantle on the all-time list, who is a much more beloved figure, especially with Yankee fans, than Babe Ruth ever was? This is a false argument.
But let me tell you
I'm going to tell you something else about this whole thing. All of the side issues are becoming the main issue with Barry Bonds. The main issue is everybody believes this guy used steroids to get to this place in baseball history. All this other stuff is just smoke.
Agreed, but I got to tell you, I'm having an OJ moment on this. Ostensibly, that was about a double murder, but it turned into a racial story. This is about drugs and cheating, and I'm starting to hear more and more and more from black players in the game that, you listen to Torrey Hunter, I talked to Ellis Burks the other day, same thing, I talked to a lot of players, and they think that because, if this is ostensibly about numbers, then why aren't we talking about McGwire's numbers? And that's the argument that I'm hearing.
Because he's the one out in front on this. Just because
But the Maris record was just as important as the Ruth record or the Aaron record.
But we didn't know then what we know now, Howard.
No, I agree. I'm just giving you the argument. I'm telling you what I've been hearing more and more, and I think that it cannot be ignored.
Laying out an argument doesn't mean that it's a good argument.
No, it's not.
And the fact that other players are saying it doesn't mean it's legitimate. And the fact that it could be turning into an OJ moment, which it could be, by the way, doesn't make it right. But the fact is, there's one big reason that McGwire, Sosa, and the rest are not being talked about the same way. They're not playing.
That's exactly
Barry Bonds is playing. That's it.
By the way, baseball's being a little bit hypocritical, saying they're not going to celebrate it, but they have special balls that they've made up, so they know the one when he passes Babe Ruth.
I'll get you one.
They don't know what they want to do.
I'll buy you one for your birthday.
Up next, Pat Riley hasn't won an NBA championship since Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar were running Showtime in 1988. Can Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal put Riley back on top? To the NBA Finals last year, but that wasn't enough to prevent Stan Van Gundy from losing his job in Miami this year. Now, Mike, do you think Pat Riley is feeling the heat in South Beach?
Oh, no. I'm sure there was another reason why when Sports Illustrated came down to do a piece on the Heat, Stan Van Gundy's not allowed to talk to them or appear on television. So they're not paranoid about him telling his tale at all. Pat Riley took a team, we've talked about this all season, that was a few minutes and one Dwayne Wade injury away from going to the NBA Finals, turned over half the roster, let it be known that he wanted to coach again, created a toxic situation for the coach who had kind of saved the franchise over the last 2 years in Miami. He better not just get to the NBA Finals this year, he better win.
Well, that's a pretty tough task you just laid out.
I know what he's up against.
First of all, forget the Pistons, who are likely to be waiting in the conference final, and then if they should ever get past them, who could be in the... They got a very tough task right now in New Jersey. I think New Jersey, and it's hard to say, a team in the New York market, has been under the radar more than any team in these playoffs, probably because LeBron and the Pistons are kind of dominating on this side, and then you have all that stuff in the West. New Jersey's a very good team that's playing extremely well, and Miami's going to have their hands full in this series.
And if you watch Miami, I've never seen a team that you would talk about as an NBA champion contender work so hard for their points. I mean, except for the last 2 games against the Bulls, this team can't move. They're slow, they're not very athletic, and you look at Richard Jefferson, Vince Carter, and Jason Kidd, they can take these guys out.
Every time Wade hits the floor, it looks like it's a career-threatening injury. Then he comes back out and makes 10 jump shots.
Exactly.
You know, a team that we're not talking a lot about happened to be the defending champs. Is that because Tim Duncan didn't have quite the season he normally does?
Everybody talks about respect. How come, if you're the defending champs, you have to play Dallas in the second round?
It's a stupid system.
You got to get rid of the system, do it all over again. We will start talking about the defending champs now, because that is going to be, I think, of all the second-round matchups, the most interesting one. Dallas is at that point now where, like the Buffalo Bills, you either are going to do it now or you're just going to recede, and you're going to be that team that just couldn't get past that team that was in front of you. The way that the Bulls had to get past the Pistons, the way the Pistons had to get past the Celtics. Dallas has to get past San Antonio. I'm sorry, but you guys are both in Texas. You're going to have to keep playing one another like this. At some point, Dallas has to believe, and maybe it's with their new coach, or maybe it's with their new coach, that they can beat and should beat San Antonio. Maybe this will be the year.
Howard, weren't you shocked at how San Antonio struggled against the Kings in the first round?
Well, and that's the whole thing about Duncan, whether he's healthy, and also it seems like maybe Ron Artest is that great a defensive player, but you look at Ginobili and you go, either he's not right or suddenly he can be defended.
Yeah.
And Dallas is playing, I think, as well. I think they're the most underrated team in the playoffs right now.
More off of Mitch's point, Dallas had the second best record in the West. San Antonio had the best. Why are they meeting in the second round? It's ridiculous. When we return, our parting shots will include a look at Marcus Vick, who went in the 8th round of the NFL draft on Wednesday. Nick Saban invited him to this weekend's minicamp with the Dolphins.
Any questions?
Where did the Pilgrim shop?
Playoffs than anybody, remains one of the most intriguing figures in the history of his sport. Not because people still persist in calling him the most dominating big man of all time, a notion that's utter nonsense. For one thing, there isn't another player of his stature who's ever spent as much time on the sidelines in the last 2 minutes of games as he does. Wilt Chamberlain couldn't shoot free throws either, but he was usually out there for all 48 minutes, not Shaq. A giant of the game in so many ways, and they can't throw him the ball at the end of a close game because they're terrified he might get fouled. He was great the other night against Chicago, a team without anybody to lean on him. He'll probably be great against the Nets, who also don't have anybody to go toe-to-toe with him. It will be a different matter entirely if he has to go against Ben Wallace to get himself back to the NBA Finals. Then we'll see how great he still is. For the past few years, Shaq has been getting heavier and older. Now he's got Dwayne Wade as his wingman, which means he's got the most talented wingman of any other superstar still playing. Kobe hasn't won without Shaq. Let's see Shaq win without Kobe.
Thanks, Mike. By the way, congratulations as your latest novel, Heat, #2 on the New York Times bestseller.
Thank you. We try harder.
We keep buying them. Mitch.
Thank you, John. What a difference a week makes. Before the NFL draft, folks were talking about Matt Leinart as the next Broadway Joe. There seemed a good chance the Jets would take him. He'd already fired Lee Steinberg in favor of a Hollywood talent agency. He was talking movies, supermodels, marketing his own handsome magic. And then Arizona took him. Whoops. And we may see magic, all right. It's called a disappearing act. The Cardinals are where off-field careers go to die. When a franchise has had more homes than playoff wins, you know you're in trouble. Emmitt Smith went there and fell off the map. To be honest, I don't know. He may still be there. Kurt Warner was once MVP. Now he's MIA. I don't think they'll be casting any blockbuster movies for an Arizona backup. Hey, Josh McCown had the job last year, and he left for greener pastures in Detroit. We may hear from Leinart again, but it'll likely be years before he gets a stage like he had in his last college game. After all, there's a reason it's Broadway Joe, not Desert Joe.
Mitch, thanks a lot. Now, I don't believe John Daly has lost $50 to $60 million gambling any more than I believe Wilt Chamberlain had 20,000 episodes. After all, Daly has won $8 million in career winnings and millions more in endorsements. But to lose $60 million, you'd have to make about $150. I do believe my friend Charles Barkley has lost $10 million, but Charles isn't going broke anytime soon. Earlier this year, hockey was hit with scandal as former star Rick Tocchet was accused of being a bookmaker. And two more words, Pete Rose. Is gambling a serious problem in sports? I asked some former players about some of their card games on team charters. They agreed a lot of the gambling is the continuation of their competitive spirit. And when you know there's $100 million coming your way, losing $10 million is chump change. But back to Daly. He's had a drinking problem and 4 wives. I'm not sure if those facts are related, but I do know this. Daly travels to his tournaments in a trailer. And if he loses another 50 or 60 million, he may end up living in one. If you missed part of the show or you just like to watch it again, you can catch us on ESPN News in a couple of hours at 12:30 Eastern Time. And please join us again next Sunday for another edition of the Sports Reporters. We're on each Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Time right here on ESPN. The Sports Center with Chris McKendry and Bob Lee is next. And good morning.